And we're back here again to this podcast named Culture Church Pod
Exactly.
Worship.
That's it. You got it.
We got our co-host Steph, Jermaine, and Fudd.
Jermaine.
Wrong.
Jermaine Shepard.
How are we doing this different day? Another day? Well, what are we doing today? What are we looking at today?
Today,
Take two.
we're still in Joshua, sorry. And we're going into Judges. We're going to finish Joshua this week. And then we're going to go into Judges. Joshua, we left off on the cities being conquered and Joshua killing more people. Kings.
All these
Murder.
is it like
blood.
31 kings, 32? 31.
Yeah.
All these kings that he killed. He did the exact same thing to each one of them.
And now he's going to the north side. He's going to the northern kings. And yeah, that's where we're at now.
Yeah, I think you mentioned last pod that this all takes place like in a bunch of years. It's not right after another. It's a lot of years have gone by with all these battles. So Joshua is now getting old. And remember Caleb? He was one of the original spies of Moses.
Mm-hmm.
He was also promised to go into the promised land because he believed. And so he comes to Joshua and tells him, hey, so there's this mountain over there where all the giants live. And mind you, Caleb was 85 years old. He goes, I want that land. So he wants to go and fight the land of the giants at 85 years old, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
People were built different back then.
He was on keto.
Definitely.
Probably.
It's your grandpa.
After getting off that manna. So, yeah, Caleb, he wants that land. So pretty much at the end of Joshua, it's pretty much just like dividing up the land. Yeah.
To the tribes.
Yeah, man, Judah gets like the best spot. They get Jerusalem, the land of Jerusalem.
No, I thought
It's Judah.
Judah gets it?
Yeah.
I thought somebody else got it.
Palestine.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it was him.
Oh, and that's when. So once they start doing that, they start now building the cities of refuge, sanctuary cities.
Again.
Yeah. And it's because of that whole thing where if you slay somebody accidentally, you can only run to these sanctuary cities. Cities of refuge. Sorry, jeez.
Call it what they are.
Yeah, pretty much. And then so you'll be safe until the high priest dies. Because if you leave, the next of kin of whoever you killed gets to kill you without any punishment.
I thought Benjamin got Jerusalem. No?
I don't think so. Could be wrong.
Anyway,
I think Simeon got the worst of it. I think
Simeon.
the Simeon tribe.
Somebody got some. How did she just, the podcast lady described it as like the donut hole.
Don't.
She got somebody, I forgot who it was. They got in the middle of somebody else's land. That's
Also,
I
they're
thought that was kind of,
landlocked.
yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, and then the Levites don't get any land, but they are also
masters of the land, kind of.
Oh, yeah, it was Simeon.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the middle.
Show on the map. He's in the middle of Judah. That's a.
Oh.
You get it?
The donut hole.
Who has Jerusalem?
Jerusalem.
It's.
It is Benjamin.
Yeah.
That is Judah.
Barely. No, Judah got Bethlehem.
Oh, Bethlehem. That's what I was. Yeah, and I think I think Simeon's tribe gets absorbed by Judah.
Probably.
later on.
Yeah. And then they all surround Philistia, which turns into modern day Palestine.
Wrong.
All right. So, yeah, Levites don't get any land. So we pretty much are reaching the end of Joshua. He's getting old. He's dividing up the land. Also, the Transjordan tribe, they go back across the sea because they were, when they asked for that land, they get to go back now.
Reuben, right? Wasn't
The
it?
Reubenites.
Reubenites.
Yeah. But when they're crossing over, they make an altar. And I think they don't call it an altar. I think they called it like a memorial of saying that just because we're on the other side of the sea again, doesn't mean we're not part of the Israelites. And so when the people of Israel heard about this, they sent people down there and asked them, "Hey, why are you guys building this idol? Like, this is like punishable by death. So why did y'all do it?" And then so they explained that this was only a monument to reaffirm the pact that they had, or that they're still with the Israelites. They're not separate. And so I think they accepted that explanation and they let it go through. What do you think? All right, moving on. So Joshua is about 110 years old. And Joshua is doing the same thing Moses did, and talking to the Israelites. Oh, one interesting thing is that Joseph's bones are finally buried. Remember, they brought him from... How long has it been? It's been
No.
like 400 years,
No.
but over 400
Joseph.
years. Yeah.
Oh, I thought I heard Joshua. I'm like, no.
Joseph's.
Yes. They've been carrying this around for hundreds of years already. Or not hundreds.
Over 400 years.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. They finally brought
That's
him home.
crazy. Like, how would they not? Whatever. But and also at the same time that Joshua dies, Eliezer dies, the high priest.
Yes.
And so Phineas,
2 deaths.
his son, takes over. Phineas. Is it Phineas?
And Ferb.
Yeah, so Phineas takes over. So that's pretty much the end of Joshua, the bloodiest of books. And it's probably Numbers too, but we're getting to the more bloody ones too. This is a crazy novella. So we come into the book of Judges. And so the podcast lady explains that these judges aren't some like how we see judges now that are presiding over trials and stuff. These people were military and civil leaders of the people that God had given his spirit to, or breathed any spirit in them so that they can be commissioned as a leader, whatever. And Judges is crazy. I think it's like 12 judges in total. There were civil and military leaders. And at this time, there was no separation of church and state. So if you broke a church law, you were punished also by the law of the land. So it was all connected together. It wasn't separate. And so the Canaanites are still there. And because for some reason they didn't drive them all out like God had told them to. And also Joshua's dumb pact with the Gideonites, right? But so Judah takes charge of the land. And one of the people that comes up, Othniel? Othniel?
He's the first judge, right?
He's the first one. So once they are in the land and they all get separated into their lots, whatever, this is like where this vicious cycle begins. So they're living great and then they sin because there's nothing else to do but to sin, right? And then God allows them to be taken over by the people that are still there. And after that, after a period of time, they call out to God so that he can save them. So he brings up somebody, a judge, to help get them out of their situation. And then there's peace in the land again. And this cycle keeps going on and on through every single judge.
Until they die, right? And then a new one comes.
Yeah, exactly. So the first judge is Othniel, and he's Caleb's son-in-law. So
Yes.
before Othniel is put in by God to be a judge, they were in captivity by the Canaanites for 8 years. And that's when Othniel is brought up, and he helps defeat the Canaanites. And there's peace within the land for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then after 40 years of comfort and joy and peace, they get bored. And then what happens? They fall into sin again. And so another king rises up against the Israelites, and they conquer them, they take over. And then that king enslaves them for 18 years. So then again, the people repent, because this is what Joshua and Moses told them. You guys need to repent, because that's the only way God is going to show up, and then y'all are going to be saved.
Mm-hmm.
So the next judge is who?
Ehud
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 is the next judge. So he, I believe he kind of tricks the king or something to be in his presence somehow. I think he cooks him something, maybe. I'm not too sure. But then he stabs him with a really long blade. And so that's pretty much how they win the battle. And then there's peace for 80 years.
Yeah.
See the cycle that keeps on happening?
Then they do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, so then they get bored, and then they sin again. And then they get conquered by another king. So the next judge is who? Shamgar. Shamgar is the next judge.
What doesn't say much about him.
Yeah, his is really short.
And then after him, Deborah.
Yeah, so they were enslaved for another 20 years, and then Deborah comes up. And I think she was the only one who was an actual judge, because the person who was the military leader was someone named Barak.
She was a prophet.
Profeta.
You hate that word now. But yeah, she was an actual judge, like you said.
Yeah, and so Barak is the one who does the actual fighting. So, yeah, so it's Deborah, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this person named Sisera.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Deborah sends Barak to go into battle with these people, right? And this Sisera person escapes. He goes into the tent of the women, because back then the women's tent and the men's tent were separate. They used separate tents. And so he thought that maybe the woman would have more like compassion towards him. But what does she do?
She kills him.
Yeah. She freaking stabs him in the head.
Deborah.
No, not Deborah.
Oh.
It's some lady in her tent.
That's crazy.
And so they defeat the people. Deborah defeats him with Barak, and then so there's peace for another 40 years.
40.
Like, why do you think they're learning anything within this time?
Or you think, since it's taking that, is it the new generation that's coming up that they're not teaching? And as they're coming up, instead of teaching them, they're not, so they're just going astray?
I think they're getting too comfortable. They don't know what else to do. Like, they get bored for 40 years or 20 years or whatever.
Is it because God gives them everything, so they're just so much in peace that...
I think they just know that, hey, if we sin, God's gonna get us out. So I think they're just counting on that.
Or I think they've just been living so good that they forget about everything else.
Well, true.
Yeah, it's like the typical story of them, because they got out of Egypt and then they were fed, and then they got bored of it. So then it's like, well, what else can we complain about? You know? And so there's peace for 40 years, and then they get bored again. There's no other reason why you would sin if you're bored and you have everything.
It's like those rich kids that have everything and they turn into drugs and stuff because they have no... Or they don't appreciate it. Maybe that's what they don't appreciate it very much.
Affluenza.
I don't know what that is, but...
It's pretty much that you pretty much live well off, that you struggle to function in life because you don't have any hardships. You're given everything, so like you don't have any struggles, and so
Yeah.
you think you're, I don't know, you're missing out, or you're missing out on the fun or something of struggling. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe. But it feels like when someone who struggles, they have more of a how can I say, they're more appreciative when they go, and it seemed like God gave them everything. That it was just, I guess, working in a bad way for them. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, it's like when you spoil a kid, right? You don't you shouldn't, because they're gonna grow up always thinking they're gonna be handed everything. But yeah, I think it's that way. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it either. I mean, I'm not like I'm perfect, but it's, I don't know what goes through the head. Like you say they're bored. Well, I don't know.
I don't know what else it could be.
Yeah.
Because if there's peace in the land, I don't think we've ever known, at least in my lifetime, where we haven't had a war. So imagine there not being any war. Like, what would anybody do?
I don't know. It gets too
It'd be too boring, right? Like,
complete. Not really.
there's no,
I think
there's nothing exciting anymore.
Well, they're probably just not appreciative. They're just like, they want something instead of just being appreciative. Like, thank you, God, for giving us this. Or
Well,
thank
that's
you.
for sure. But after you keep on saying thank you, God, every day for giving us peace, but like it's boring over here, so what can we do?
That's weird.
Yeah, but like, it's not like everybody's living in peace. They got to see the countries around them. Like, eventually, they still see there's murders around. There's people coming in and out, and there's stuff going on. So instead of being appreciative, I could understand the whole world, and there's no, everybody has peace, and then you get tired of it. But you still see people or foreigners coming in and talking about like, oh, all these people got murdered and this and that, and like, you know what I mean?
So I was thinking that like too. I mean, like maybe people that are some of the Canaanites, maybe they're coming in and like influencing people. I don't know.
That could
Cause
be
stirring up trouble.
Well, I mean, they are still there, so it's possible that they are still being influenced. But I mean, the Bible says that there's peace for 40 years. So maybe in the meantime, they're being influenced another way, and then they just start going crazy because they get bored. They want to try something new. Like, oh, look, there's this idol. Like, cool, let's do that. There's nothing else to do. I don't know. This is my opinion. Maybe they're bored. I think they're bored.
I mean, look at the garden. There was nothing exciting going on. They still got tempted and still went for it.
Well, also it happens after that judge dies, so they have no accountability. They have nobody to guide them to. I don't know.
What judge dies?
Like whenever a judge dies, that's when they. It says that's what it says.
Oh, so you think because there's not an authority figure that they just go crazy?
Yeah.
Possibly.
They go astray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it leads back into the cycle. And so the last judge of this week is Gideon. I think this is where they got the inspiration for the movie 300, right? They has to. So Gideon is so after Deborah, right, they're at peace for 40 years, and then they get taken over by the Midianites again, and they take over for 7 years. So then this Gideon guy, he's just off somewhere. He's like the least of the people.
Yeah, he's
So
sitting under an oak
Uh-huh.
tree, I guess.
Yeah, and so
He's just chilling.
yeah, and really nobody expects him to be anything. So I think God really wanted to show like his power through him, because he was, I don't think really anybody paid attention to him. And so that's why I think he picked him. So the Gideon pretty much was a coward, but he was still going to be the next judge. And I say coward like lightly only because he questions everything.
Well, yeah,
which is probably what I would have done too. So I'm
Yeah.
probably a coward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he told God when he told him, "Rise up, you're going to be a warrior." He said,
Prove it.
"Yeah." He said, "But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us?" where are your wonders that you did to our ancestors? You know, like he was
Yeah.
like,
He was kind of like
Where you at?
egging God on, like, I thought you could do it. You know what I mean? Type of thing. Like, why do I have to do it?
I feel like we're the same way too.
I'm
Yeah.
definitely Gideon, not in the sense that he's the judge.
Questioning.
I wouldn't say that, but I definitely question. Yeah,
Sometimes you feel like your parents went through some stuff that you feel like you haven't gone through, so you feel like, well, where's all this you heard about that happened, this and that. And sometimes it feels like, where you at? Like, yeah, I heard about this and all that, but now it just feels like we're alone and there's nobody here or something,
yeah.
Yeah, he even said, how can I save them? My clan's the weakest, and I'm the least in my family. That's the ones he picks.
Yeah, and so that's why I think it's more of God than anything, because he doesn't pick the strongest of people, and I think he's been picking the strongest in the past few judges. So this one, I think he tried to like do a different tactic now. It's like, oh, these people are in peace because I chose the strongest guy to get them out of it. But let's see what they say now if I choose the weakest among them, the cowardly, I guess. And so God starts preparing them for battle, and nobody believes him. Like, yeah, whatever, God's called you to be the next judge, whatever, sure. And so I would be the same way. Like, everybody's telling me, how could you be? And so I'd be telling God, and if God's telling me I'm going to be an next judge, well, I'd be like, well, prove it, because clearly nobody else thinks so. So, like, he keeps testing God, right? Asking him, like, he does several things. I didn't write them down. Can you read it?
For Gideon?
Yeah.
What does Gideon do?
Well, he asked God to...
Oh, yes, to wait for him. Yeah, I was going over that. He said, wait for me. Well, let me see. If now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that is really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you. Then he goes and prepares a goat and the flour he made, and then putting the meat in a basket, all that. And then he brings it back to God, and then he touched the meat and the bread with the tip of the staff, and fire flared from the rock. And then he disappeared.
Yeah. And I think if anybody else would have been like telling God this, God would have probably just gone to someone else. But I think God knew what he was getting into. And so he didn't he didn't condemn Gideon for asking him all these questions and asking him to prove, because he knew that Gideon needed more proof than anybody else to actually get the job done. And so Gideon gets his army, right? And then he tells them to go to start marching over there. But then right when they're going to prepare to fight, he tells them, you know what? I want to prove this so much that this is going to be from me, God saying, that he tells Gideon, all right, I'm going to cut down the size of the army now. So he tells them, hey, whoever doesn't want to be here, you can go ahead and leave. There will be no punishment, nothing. You can just go, and a few people leave.
A few.
A lot, right?
22,000.
There you go.
About 10,000 are right. And it's cool because before that happened, God said, like you said, Abraham, there's too many of y'all, but if I let you win the fight with this many people, they're going to get overconfident in themselves. They're going to start saying, what was it? My own strength has saved me. Back to the self-idolatry. So he wanted to avoid that too.
Exactly. So then he finally gets them down to 300 people, 300 soldiers. But that's not even how they win. So during this time, God is preparing the Midianites to pretty much do civil war on each other. Can you read off what God does to the Midianite soldiers?
It starts with Gideon having a dream, or heard the dream.
Yeah.
A piece of bread, right?
And then...
Yeah, go for that.
Gideon and 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just right after they changed the guard. They blew the trumpets, broke the jars that were in their hands, and then they smashed the jars, grasping the torches in their left hands and holding in their right the trumpets they were to blow. They shouted a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The army fled to Bethshitta towards Zerah as far as the border of Abel Meholah. And then all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they seized the waters of the Jordan. They captured 2 of the Midianites' leaders. They killed the leaders. Basically it.
And that's how he wins. They didn't even. I think they fought off the rest of the people that were there, but they pretty much all he needed getting. It goes back to obedience, right? And you just follow what God says, and He's gonna bring the victory to you. But that's pretty much where it ends. Yeah,
That's crazy.
The cool part at the end. They pursued the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon.
Yeah. Like a trophy.
Uh-huh.
What do you think, Manny? Final thoughts?
This one, not too much.
Next.
Pretty straightforward.
At least he's honest.
JP?
I think the story of Gideon's pretty cool, how he kept doubting and asking for signs. At the end of, what was it? Chapter 6, it's funny. Because in verse...
He asked for something else.
Yeah, in verse
do something
36, he's like, I'm going to place a piece of on the ground, and
The dew to be on
yeah,
that.
if there's only dew on the fleece and the ground is dry, I know it's you. So that happens, and so the next day it says, "Don't be angry with me, but let me ask you just one more request." So he kept seeing all these signs and wonders, but he was still doubting. I mean, I would be too if God told me, "Hey, you're gonna take this army down. Let me just see it one more time." But God wasn't angry, and he did it.
Do you think he asked for more because he could have maybe chalked that up to coincidence?
Maybe, yeah. That's what I don't know if y'all do it too, but sometimes I'm like, "Lord, give me a sign," and then like something happens. I'm like, "Wait, was that you or was it just me?" Do the sign again.
But just in case, do another.
So yeah, and then right before they went to battle, when we mentioned that God's like, "All right, you have too many people, take them down." He's like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, do this." And then more people left, and he's like, and then more people left till they were left with the 300. I mean, if I know some of us would be like 300 people, shoot, I'm leaving, but he stuck with it because God told him that, hey, you're scared, you just got to obey, and you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't really know before reading the Judges, like actually reading it. I didn't know what the Judges were or anything. But yeah, Gideon's cool. And in one of the notes on my Bible, it says he is a member of the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11, they talk about all the people that their faith were shown in action. And like I was reading it right now, that they talk about everybody, like Jacob, everybody. And that in verse 32 it said, "And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell you about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Japhat, about David and Samuel, and all the prophets who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised." So, that's interesting to know that, yeah, and I see that Gideon he was like us, he is like, we are him, that we doubt him, and we, like you said, we ask for signs, and we ask, "Oh, is it really you?" And, yeah, that's, God doesn't choose, what's that quote? He doesn't choose the qualified, he qualifies the chosen, or something like that. Like you don't have to have everything. You don't have to have all the qualifications. He's going to tell you what to do, and he's going to make you prosper in for him to do his will.
And all you have to do is obey. It's funny because I think Gideon is the more relatable to us, like you said, because it was just a regular person, and God said it was the least, or he said himself, he's the least of his tribe, of the least tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And so nobody expected that. And so I think even us, or at least for me, I am Gideon because I want to over prepare for everything. And then once it's all settled and taken care of or finished, you realize you didn't even need all that stuff. And so I think here God is just demonstrating is that all you need to do is listen to me. This has been the whole theme of the whole idea of getting out of Egypt and going to the wilderness and conquering this land of Canaan that he had promised. Because it's all obedience, because I think you already have the faith because you've seen the people come out of Egypt and God providing for them. Now it's just obedience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's faith and obedience that gets you through. But other than that, then it's just, we're just doing stuff because we don't trust him. We don't have the faith in him. And that's why when Gideon decides to ask him about all these like signs to prove that it's actually him, I think in his mind still, at least I would have been like, yeah, you did this, but I'm still doubting. Because, like, why would you choose me? And like you said, he qualifies as chosen because obviously Gideon wasn't qualified for anything. He was the least of the least. So I think it speaks more on what God is able to do through people that I think he uses, even now, he uses people that don't even qualify for anything. And so with that, we're still going to keep on going with judges. And I think we'll come up to some of your favorite judges, like Samson and Delilah.
Well, not her. Right? It was him, but not her.
Yeah. But we'll see you guys next week. Continue reading, and we'll be back next week with another one. Pieces.
Peace.
Deuces.